Sereniel is here, and she is really, really good. Out of all the banner units that we've had so far, Haru, Yuki, and Chizuru, none of them really come close to how good Sereniel is. So this video is going to be going over how you should build Sereniel, her best partner, her best gear sets, what Epiphanies you should go for, how you play her, pretty much everything, her best teammates too. It's worth mentioning that Sereniel is a seasonal unit. They've tied her to, I guess, Christmas, and seasonal units will not be included in the standard recruitment pool after their seasonal combatant rate up recruitment period ends. This means that you won't be able to lose your 50-50 to them, and you won't be able to get them from the standard combatant rescue like you can with the other 3 units that we've had so far. This will also apply to Pekko, and usually you can buy partners in the shop. You won't be able to once the banner period ends. If we go to the memory archive, you can see here, it'll disappear in 19 days, and this will also disappear in 19 days. So if you want these, you'll have to get them now or wait for a rerun. Now, if you need a little bit of extra help getting these units, then you should make sure to check out lootbar.gg. No matter what you're looking to pick up, Lootbar provides it fast, secure, and at a more affordable price, with 24/7 customer service and refunds guaranteed. If you haven't gotten your double crystals yet, buying it on Lootbar can save you up to $30 if it's your first purchase. Right now, you can also participate in Lootbar's Christmas limited time lucky draw event. Complete your daily missions to get rolls, and you can spend these rolls to get coupons to save even more money off your purchases, with your first roll being a guaranteed win. Lootbar has been providing deals for games for years, giving them over 30,000 reviews on Trustpilot with an average rating of 4.9. New users can currently get 2 coupons for an additional 12% and 8% off their purchases, so make sure to click on the link below and sign up now. So first, let's talk about her cards. The entirety of Sereniel's gameplay centers around her ravaging the enemy and spamming homing lasers, plus a homing laser L, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I think the priority on your cards and Epiphanies is going to vary a little bit depending on what you're doing. Like, I think during Chaos runs, you might want something different than what you want for a Great Rift, or even just like clearing Basin. But also, this unit's honestly good enough, you can kind of run whatever you want. Let's go over all of the cards. I'll try to not take too long with this. For her basic cards, you've got 2 pulse fires and a magnetic field. Magnetic field sucks, get rid of it. The pulse fires, ideally you would get rid of them long run, but I think that during a Chaos run itself, it's fine to keep them. This is honestly one of the better basic cards out there. It's got the standard basic card, flat 1x damage, but it's got a 50% chance to create 1 homing laser L from her potential. Homing laser L is one of the core parts of her build, so let's go over everything about it now. It's got exhaust 2 on it, so you can play it twice before it fully exhausts. You're going to use the pulse fire, you'll generate it, you'll play the card. It's also 0 cost, so it's completely free to play. And then when you ravage, it'll move from your graveyard, which is a combination of your used card pile and your discard pile. And then you'll play it again, and it'll fully exhaust. It also gives Afterglow, which is a unique buff for Sereniel. It gives tenacity damage to your attack cards and also increased damage amount plus 50% additive if the enemy is ravaged, and it procs whenever you attack, pretty much. So the important thing here is that it moves from graveyard to hand. It does not move from your draw pile, and this is an issue that I think is probably very common that I don't see talked about too much, which is homing laser overflow. If you have, let's say, 10 homing laser Ls in your discard pile, and then suddenly you shuffle your hand, your draw pile is going to be flooded with homing laser Ls, which I don't think are very good cards in isolation. Like, it's a good card because it's free damage, especially with a lot of her other cards being able to generate this for free, and it moves to your hand after you ravage the enemy, but if it's in your draw pile, suddenly it's not very good anymore. So I think that you want to be a little bit careful, which we'll see more in a little bit when we're looking at some of her other cards that generate a lot of homing laser Ls, that you want to ideally exhaust all of your homing laser Ls before you shuffle your hand. The pulse fire, try to remove these, but I think if your final save data has 1 pulse fire, not the end of the world. Now let's talk about her last starting card, homing laser, which is the other core part of her build. It's just homing laser without the L. The L is the little mini version of this, pretty much. The base version of this card looks pretty similar. It's got damage, it's got 2 Afterglow instead of 1, and on Ravage, move from graveyard to hand. For the Epiphanies, the first thing to note is that some of these have been upgraded. The Ravage now moves the hand just in general, so even if it's in your draw pile, it'll move the hand in Ravage. I think these are really, really nice because it means that your draw pile will be less cluttered. I would say that Homing Laser is generally the card you want to be copying the most, just because it's really consistent. You ravage the enemy, which Sereniel has no problem doing, and it'll move into your hand. And even if it's in your draw pile or your discard pile, you should be getting to use all of your Homing Lasers every single turn, potentially multiple times per turn, depending on what you're doing. So I think this is just easily her best card to copy. Now let's take a look at the Epiphany effects. The first one I think is solid, it's just very situational and you have to plan around it. You have the Ravage, move the hand, and on Destroy add 1 extra hit. Destroy is if the target is already ravaged, or if you ravage the target with this attack, then you will get the effect, and here it's 1 extra hit. Note that when you ravage a target with a Homing Laser, the Homing Laser that you ravaged with won't get moved back into your hand, so ideally you would want to always play all of your Homing Lasers before you ravage the target, assuming you're planning on cycling them. Now, once you actually ravage, this card is pretty good, because in terms of raw damage, it's the best one. It's 2 hits. All these other ones give Afterglow, and Afterglow does have the damage amount boost, the additive damage boost, but this is still going to be higher damage, plus it'll stack really nicely with any sort of additive damage boosts. So this is great for damage, but notice that it has no Afterglow on it, so in terms of managing tenacity, that could be a problem, especially on the initial turn when if you draw into this card, you're not going to have great Afterglow. You're not going to have any sort of Afterglow application, plus the Destroy effect won't actually apply, and you'll still want to play the card anyways, just so you can... It's a 0 cost, it's a free play, you'll shuffle it, you'll move it into your discard pile, and then draw it again on Ravage. So again, this is a situational card. I think this is the best card in terms of raw damage, but in general, I think you need to have very specific setup to be using this card. The second one is one that I really like. It's pretty much the same card as the base one, but better. It's just more damage, more Afterglow, and on Ravage moves to your hand from anywhere. There's not too much to say about this. It's just the base card, but better. And I mentioned that because it moves to your hand from anywhere, this means that it'll clean up your draw pile once you Ravage once. 3 Afterglow means that you can do a bunch of attacks that benefit from the extra tenacity damage or extra damage amount. This is just a very solid card. For the third one, it's lost the effect that moves it to hand on Ravage, but instead you get to create 2 Homing Laser L's in your discard pile. I also don't like this card that much because of the Homing Laser overflow issue. You're going to generate Homing Lasers in your discard pile, which means that you can't play them immediately. You ravage the enemy once, and now you'll move it into your hand, you play it once, and it still has 1 exhaust. Unless you can ravage the enemy a second time before shuffling your hand, in which case then you would fully exhaust the Homing Laser L's, then you're going to end up with a bunch of Homing Lasers, or Homing Laser L's, in your draw pile potentially. If you're doing a Chaos run, this could be down to RNG on when you draw this card. If you're doing more specific setups, then maybe you'd be able to set it up to use this, but I would say this card is just okay. It's something that you have to plan around too. This one is probably my favorite. It's less damage and less Afterglow, but on Ravage or at the start of the turn, it moves into your hand. And the start of turn is really, really nice, because let's say you're doing a specific setup where you shuffle your entire hand every single turn. This means that it'll clean up your draw pile, or even if it's not every turn, just if you shuffle your hand, your draw pile will have ideally 4 Homing Lasers immediately moved out of it. It'll clean up your draw pile a ton, you'll be able to get better cards on your draw, and also you'll be able to reuse this card every single turn. It's just really consistent damage, plus it still has the on Ravage effect to move to hand. I think this is just probably her best one, and the card that I would prioritize copying the most. It's either this one or this one that I like the most out of all of her Homing Lasers. One extra thing that I do want to mention for Homing Laser is that you can get the 1 AP Divine Epiphany on it, which means that if you have the one where it moves to your hand at the start of the turn, you get an additional 3 to 4 AP every single turn just by having this card. So especially if you manage to hit the Divine Epiphany on this, this is easily the best Homing Laser for you to copy. The fifth one is really funny. It moves all Homing Laser L's in your graveyard to your hand. I think this is very useful for preventing the Homing Laser overflow. If you're doing a build that's focused entirely around just spamming Homing Laser L's, I think you probably want a copy or two of this just so you can clean up your entire hand or your entire discard pile before you shuffle your deck. It does lack the on Ravage move to hand effect, which means that you're going to be losing out on a bit of damage whenever you Ravage the enemy though. Overall, I like number 4 the most just because it's the most consistent. You'll always have this card in your hand at the start of the turn, so you get to play it for free and then get it back again on Ravage. It's a little bit less damage and a bit less afterglow, but still really good, I think. Number 2 is also great. It's a bit more damage and a lot more afterglow. You just don't get it at the start of your turn. And then number 1 is also solid. It's a bit more specific. You have to make sure you have enough tenacity damage so that, especially if you're like refreshing, that you'll be able to re-ravage it rather. So number 1 is good but situational, and then 2 is very situational because you're going to be putting them into your discard pile and you definitely need a way to get them back. And then I think 5 is specifically if you're doing an infinite homing laser L setup. Next up, let's take a look at Plasma Missile. So for Plasma Missile, this at the base, it does extra tenacity damage, and if the enemy isn't ravaged, it'll activate one more time. This card, the timing is a bit important for the base version because you won't get the extra hit if you ravage on that attack. It has to be specifically you hit the enemy and they're still not ravaged, then it'll activate one more time. For the Epiphanies, we've got quite a lot of them here. The first one is just the same effect, but better. It's a full 1 tenacity damage now. This is very, very useful if it's a good opening card, basically, to help set up your Ravage so that you can get your homing lasers back and do more damage. So if you need this for your setup, I think this card is like, okay, it's just a good opening card. This card is kind of a meme card, I think. It's only used against bosses because it counts the decreased tenacity damage, and bosses have like 8 or 9 tenacity bar, so you could end up with like a pretty big nuke, like base 700 damage. I think this is just fully a meme card, very, very funny, but probably not that good. This one, I think, is good in certain situations. I think this card is not great in Chaos, because sure, you inflict instinct weakness, but the plus 60 damage amount to homing lasers for one turn can be a bit hard to use. Depending on your turn draw, sometimes you'll just end up in a situation where you use this card and you don't really get to get any homing lasers back, which kind of sucks, because the damage amount only lasts from one turn. But if you're bossing, I think it's really, really nice, just because if you're doing like Great Rift, for example, it should be a situation where you should have set up to consistently get your homing lasers, in which case plus 60 damage amount to homing lasers every single, or just all of your homing lasers is going to be really, really good. I think this is the best card if you're doing more like specific stuff. This card, you get 3 homing laser L's and they're in your draw pile, which means that I think you can only use this card if you are playing a really draw heavy team. Because again, homing laser L does not move into your hand on Ravage from your draw pile, only from your graveyard. So this means that this will bloat your draw pile a little bit. I don't like this card that much specifically because of that effect, but if you're playing with like maybe a Veronica or something, and you have a bunch of ways to draw your card, or draw a bunch of your cards, and that issue of having extra like okay cards in your draw pile isn't going to be an issue, then this card can be okay. Now for Plasma Missile upgrade, it's a unique, which means that when you're doing your Chaos runs, if you're building other characters, this card can't be copied, so that's very useful. Also, it does thin your deck a little bit. This is one of my preferred cards for doing Chaos runs, specifically because of the unique and also the deck thinning thing, and the effect being very consistent. You get 50% damage to a random enemy at the end of turn, plus 30% damage amount for each homing laser moved to hand for one turn. Now, this damage overall is going to be less than the Plasma Missile, but because it's an upgrade, it's a permanent effect, so you don't have to worry about, like, did I get any homing lasers this turn? Whenever you get your homing lasers, you'll get the damage boost. So this is the Chaos priority, I would say. overall, I think this one's nice for breaking or ravaging if you need it. This one's a funny meme card. This one is the best one for bossing. This one you need draw, and this one for chaos. Now for Shining Core. Shining Core at base creates 2 homing laser L's. And then for the Epiphanies, you can either create 3 homing laser L's, and I think we've talked enough about how homing laser L works. This one, because you create it directly into your hand, it's similar to the basic card, where you'll use it, and then you just ravage once and you'll exhaust it. So this is fine, it does cost 1 for 3 homing laser L's, which is pretty decent damage. So this one creates 2 homing laser L's and increases exhaust of those cards by 2. I don't like this because of the homing laser overflow issue. The only situation that I think this is good is if you are using Selena to refresh the boss's tenacity, and you're just going to draw those homing lasers over and over again, then that could be good, because if you really think about it, exhaust 4 times 2, that's 8 homing lasers. This is 3 times 2, that's only 6. So this is good if you're in the specific situation where you can draw those homing lasers over and over again before you shuffle your hand. Now this middle card I think is just her best one. It's an upgrade, unique initiation, so you can't get any copies of it, and it's guaranteed to be in your starting draw at the start of the battle. You get 2 homing laser L's, and on Ravage create 2 more homing laser L's. This is just really nice. It's really consistent damage. I mentioned that you should probably be duping your normal homing laser. So let's say you manage to get 3 homing lasers. This means that on Ravage, you'll draw all 3 of those into your hand, plus create 2 more homing laser L's. You'll pretty much be able to instantly re-ravage the enemy. I just think that it's the most consistent. Like, I don't think there's any situation where you wouldn't really want this card, unless you want to set up some, like, fun things where you create, like, a billion homing laser L's and then draw them all into your hand with the other Epiphany from homing laser, the regular homing laser. In general, you're going to want this one. I think even if you're, like, bossing and you're refreshing tenacity bar with Selena, just it keeps on creating more homing lasers. This is probably, I think in all situations, the best Shining Core. This X card meme build, I guess, this already creates 3 homing lasers for 1 cost. Even if you have the, even if you have the equipment that makes it so you get X plus 1, would probably make this X plus 2, and you get haste on the card, but at best, this is still going to be 3 versus 3, and yeah, there's no point picking this up, really. I think you just pick up this one. And if you really want to, you could copy this. Shining Core, other upgrade. So this one's kind of similar to the first one, the difference being that you create a normal homing laser, and you can pick whichever one you want, any of the Epiphanies. I think this card is honestly good. It's just, I think the middle one is better. Though maybe there's certain builds that people want to run where you go for this one. Overall, I think you just it's always the middle one, and then the first one and 5th one could have potential usage depending on what you want to do with your Sereniel. The second one is a very specific setup where I think this could be better than the first one, and the 4th one just kind of sucks. Lastly, well, at least for the Epiphany cards, we have Cobalt Light. This is a 3 cost, 4 times damage to random enemies, 1 tenacity damage for each hit. So this is big damage and big tenacity damage, but it is a 3 cost. Looking at the Epiphanies, the cost still remains pretty high. This first one, it's extra damage, and on Ravage, decreased cost by 1. So one important thing about this is that this Ravage decreased cost by 1 effect does stack. You can eventually end up with a 0 cost Cobalt Light. The problem is that this card specifically has to be the card doing the Ravage. This effect won't activate if it's a different card doing the Ravage, which I think makes this card really, really hard to use, because your 3 cost is like your entire hand's worth of AP most of the time. This means that you're literally sacrificing your entire turn to Ravage. Like, you're gonna get higher damage just by using those AP on other cards. I think this card is just kind of too hard to use. If this activated, like Kamika's Whirlpool, where the effect activates no matter what causes like the reduction or causes like the condition, And this card would actually be really good if you could eventually decrease it to 0 cost, but because it has to be specifically this card, I think this card is not good. This card, meme card, it's a retain. If you retain it 5 times, you'll get 9 hits. This would break anything. It's 9 hits, 144 x9 plus 9 extra tenacity damage. It's still 3 cost though, so I don't like it that much. Fun meme card, pretty much. So this one, it's a 2 cost random enemies, 1 homing laser for each target hit. This is like maybe if you're trying to farm or something, though there's no reason to use this card when you have maneuvering fire, really, if you're trying to like farm simulation or something. Because it only creates per target hit. If you're like bossing, it's only going to create 1 homing laser for 2 cost, really bad value. This one is the best one, not only because it's 1 cost, so it doesn't eat all of your AP at once. It adds 1 extra hit for each homing laser in hand. Let's say you ravage the enemy, you get 3 homing lasers and 2 homing laser L's into your hand with the build that I mentioned, then you would probably end up in a situation where you have 5 homing lasers for 1 cost, you hit 6 times, and you don't get any additional tenacity damage, but you would play this right after ravaging the enemy anyways, and you should have, like, no problem ravaging the enemy, really. I think 3 cost is just way too prohibitive in the first place. And then here we go on the last one. It's still a 3 cost. Sure, you always attack weakness. You don't get extra tenacity damage. You exchange it for a weakness attack, and you activate 1 more time on Ravage. So it's 5 hits. It's 3 cost. It's not good. Overall, I think it's just take the 4th one if you can. If you really have to, like, pick up the 2nd one, I guess, just because or the 3rd one, just because it only costs 2. But really, I think the costs are just too high on this card, and you're just going to go for the 1 cost. I would go for the 1 cost even if the effect sucked, just so it, like, costed less. And then we have her mythic card, Pale Shooting Star. This activates 3 homing lasers in her draw pile and graveyard. It's 3 homing lasers total. Like, if it doesn't matter if you have some in your draw pile and some in your discard pile, it'll only activate 3. And this does prioritize your regular homing lasers, from what I know. So, if you have, let's say, like, 3 homing lasers, and then, like, 3 homing laser L's, it'll just use your homing lasers first, which is nice, maybe, because then it won't exhaust them. One interesting thing is because it just activates the homing lasers, you could potentially get some of these effects going, like the one that moves all homing laser L's in your graveyard to your hand. You could activate it with this card. There's definitely some potential for some pretty funny setups with this card. I think it does activate all of their secondary effects. And then we have her Eco skill. So this one's really interesting. It's a big AoE, very costly. It's 6 EP, but it moves all homing laser L's into your exhaust pile to your hand. You want to play this card when you have no cards in your hand, but it pulling from your exhaust pile is really, really interesting. You're not going to want to use this card until you've exhausted 10 homing laser L's at least if you're bossing. Otherwise, just use it whenever it's a big AoE nuke. It's just interesting because it pulls from your exhaust pile. For the card Motion Restoration, I think Pale Shooting Star is the best one. Shining Core is also pretty good. I usually prioritize the ones where you can actually see the unit. The thing with Shining Core is because I think the upgrade is the best version. I think this is the 2nd best one, but if you want to play Homing Laser L spam and you're going to copy your Shining Cores and you're going to have a billion of these, then that might make Shining Core the best one. 3rd place is probably Plasma Missile. It's because, I mean, even if it's just her backside, you can see the character still. Homing Laser comes in 4th place because you're going to be seeing this card a lot more than you're going to be seeing Cobalt Light, with Cobalt Light being last in priority. Now let's take a look at her partner Peko. Peko is really, really good. With just 1 copy, we have 8% extra attack, and then when the assigned combatant's cards move from graveyard to hand, basically just ravage the enemy, you gain 1 repairs complete, which is plus 10% damage amount, stacking up to 3 times, plus 30%. Pretty much you're guaranteed this on your first ravage. The important thing is that this stays. Like, it does not mention for 1 turn. If you Ravage once, you'll have a permanent plus 30% for the rest of the fight, assuming you have like 3 cards to move from graveyard to your hand. You also get just plus 15% damage boost against Ravage targets, so a bunch of really good stuff just from the passive effect. Next up we have Overclock Beacon, and this is interesting because this gets added to Sereniel as a permanent buff, the Overclock Beacon. The effect is that when an ally inflicts Ravage, you get 1 Overclock for 1 turn. Overclock, if I can click here, gives you plus 25% crit chance for 1 turn. So the crit chance isn't permanent, but the effect of getting Overclock is permanent. This means that every single turn, if you Ravage the enemy, plus 25% crit chance. Really, really nice effect. You just play this at the start of the fight, and every time you Ravage, you'll get a bunch of crit chance. If you don't have Pekko, or you don't want to get her, Yuri is next up. Plus 16% attack. That's it. This is all that you need for Yuri to be really, really good. And then we also have Driven Deployment as her Ego skill. 3 EP for draw 2 is also a really good effect as well. For her potentials, the main thing is the unique card upgrade. All of her damage is coming from unique cards, so you definitely want to get this. The stat boosts, of course, with a priority on the crit chance over the crit damage. And that's because here, her unique stat upgrade, if her crit chance is greater than 30%, plus 10% damage amount to Homing Laser, and this applies to Homing Laser L as well. It's both of them, so you definitely want to get this. And if the crit chance is greater than 60%, you get an additional plus 5%. That's why I say you want to focus the crit chance before the crit damage. So eventually, we are going to want to level this as well. This here is nice for Chaos runs, 50%. A chance to get 1 Homing Laser L when using Pulse Fire. And you can also level this for Chaos runs if you want. It's pretty cheap. We also have this here, the neutral card. It's not super important, but if you plan on using Precision Aim, it could be nice with like the Forbidden Hunger builds, or just maneuvering fire shenanigans, and then this is definitely a skip. For her memory fragments, I'm going 2-2 broken. This is just because... Okay, so the new Instinct set is good. Yes, if the enemy is Ravaged, it is a very, very big damage boost, and it's actually good. My thing with it is that I don't feel like farming it. I don't think it's necessary, because this character is honestly good enough that you don't need that set. And because it only works when the enemy is Ravaged, like let's say for Great Rift, the current strat is to refresh the enemy's tenacity bar with Selena. If you're refreshing the tenacity bar, then the enemy's not going to be Ravaged, then you're going to be losing out on quite a bit of damage. And then, so when you're min-maxing, you're losing out on a lot of damage, and it's not that good. And if you're not min-maxing, I don't think it really matters. I'm just giving her 2-2, and we're going to roll with it. The stat prio, it's pretty much the same thing. You just go for like crit chance. I don't have an Instinct goblet, but if you do have Instinct, it's better. I'm using attack because I don't have Instinct. Yeah, Instinct is definitely better. I just don't have it. And then attack percent. You're pretty much, it's just crit, attack, and crit chance. That's pretty much it. For her egos, we don't really need anything, but the big one is at 2. At the start of battle, gives you 2 Homing Laser L's, and then at the start of the turn, if Homing Laser is one of the cards drawn, draw 1 card. Additional turn draw is really, really nice. The first one, which I shouldn't have skipped over, just increases the amount of Homing Lasers that you activate from Pale Shooting Star from 3 to 5. So this could be useful for exhausting some more of your Homing Laser L's. The max Homing Lasers you can even get is 4 anyways. This is just some extra damage to Death Halo, her Ego skill, and you get haste so that you don't, like, the 10 Homing Lasers you play don't just make the boss attack you over and over. Could be useful against certain enemies that have refreshing turns, like the Soul Collector. This one's not super important though. E4 is just nice. For each Homing Laser is to move to hand on Ravage. She gets extra damage, plus 50% damage for 1 turn. This is a pretty big damage boost. It's also pretty deep in, but it's basically just think of it as a 50% damage boost after you Ravage each turn, assuming you move at least 5 cards. And then this is just the extra damage on her cards. And then here, when an ally inflicts Ravage, she inflicts 80% damage for each segment of the Ravage target's max tenacity. That target. This is just big damage, pretty much, on bosses Like bosses have like 8 or 9 bars, do like 700% damage or something. Pretty much I would say the main thing is just E2 is probably the most important one. Besides that, 4 and 6 are additional big damage boosts, everything else being a relatively small damage boost. Now let's talk about Sereniel save data, the general setup that we want with her cards plus her equipment. The equipment's going to vary a bit depending on which chaos you choose to farm. The two main categories is Lab 0 or Zero System. The upside to Lab 0 is that you can reset fast at no cost. The downside is that Heart of the Orvane sucks. You're never going to see it, and there's a chance that even if you do see it, you're not going to get the right card. So that's pretty lame. Zero System, on the other hand, your copy event is much easier to hit, plus it's a guaranteed selection. The downside is that it will cost you millions of credits, or units rather, to reset, which kind of sucks. So it's up to you which one you want to do. Lab 0 also offers a removal event, which is why if we remove, let's say, the 3 basics, you can see there's a variance of 50 points, depending on whether or not you manage to get Mutant Sample, which can be removed for free. Blue Pot, notably, also has a removal event. It's a bit less common than Mutant Sample, but that one, the one from Blue Pot, can be played, so you don't have to use a shop removal on it, which can be nice for getting more consistent copies. Now, for the equipment, the best equipment generally comes from the Foretold Ruin, because in the Foretold Ruin, you're able to pick up the Singing Sword, which gives 15% attack. It's slightly worse than the Intellect of Discord, but much more common. Intellect of Discord is a rare spawn. You're not going to see it every single fight, plus it's a 1 in 6 drop. While Singing Sword is only a legendary, it's much easier to come across. And then Foretold Ruin also lets you pick up the Eye of the Punisher as a unique from the boss. Because it's a boss drop, you're not necessarily guaranteed to see it. It's 30%, where did it go? It's 30% damage if the enemy is alone, which when you're bossing, yes, the enemy is alone. This isn't insane or anything, because Laboratory 0 has something that's just the same thing, plus 30% damage amount. So this one looks like it's multiplicative, assuming that assuming the text is correct, rather. If you don't see it, the backup is just the Morpheus Cube, plus 25, should be a percent there, I think, damage amount is the backup. For the armor, there's nothing, too special here. Honestly, none of them really, the Wings of Freedom from Lab 0 is the best one, but this is a really rare piece of equipment. Generally, you're just going to be running whatever. You do Psionic Combat Suit for more shield, because you do exhaust a decent amount of cards, depending on your setup from all of the Homing Laser L's that you play. Or if you just want a bit more damage, it's a very small amount of damage, but you can get 3 counterattack from Assault Gauntlets. Let's just put in the Psionic Combat Suit for now. And then for the weapon, like I said, Intellect of Discord, Stinging Sword, or if you're doing Lab 0, then you'll be able to pick up, potentially, the Foggy Crystal Ball. So you've got a lot of options here for what you want to work with. Now for her cards, we removed all 3 basics already, and ideally you do hit through the Mutant Sample event. Or if you're doing Blue Pot for some reason, then you can get there's 2 events for it, but the free removal event basically lets you save 50 points. And then we're going to be picking Homing Laser, and you can pick whichever one you want. I'm just going to do the one that activates at the start of the turn, and we'll copy it 3 times. This is anywhere from 90 to 140. Let's say, you just get 140, and there's a tier 13 on Nightmare difficulty will let you hit 160 points. Just add in the Forbidden card, and you'll be at 160. For the Forbidden cards, either Eternal Hunger can be nice, especially because if you're running her with, Selena or something, or Nia can also activate Forbidden Hunger, or Eternal Hunger. You can have Sereniel be the holder of this. Otherwise, Portrait of Fury is always nice. It's just very nice for draw. And you also have Ecstasy for a bunch of damage as well. You can pick whichever one you want, really. That would get you to 160. And in the case that you did hit the Mutant Sample event, then you could pick up a neutral card if you want to. Keep in mind that neutral cards do bloat your deck a little bit, so it's a bit of a risk in terms of getting the right copy. But you can pick up Precision Aim or something to help manipulate the Eternal Hunger a bit more. And the other Epiphanies I've gone over already, but this is in general what your equipment or and cards should look like in your save data. The Foretold Ruin version would look something like this. Now let's talk about what characters you should be using with Sereniel. Sereniel by herself is already extremely strong. She does a ton of damage, and her kit flows together really nicely, just without any extra sort of support. But if you're going to give her some support, she mainly benefits from characters that can help her draw a lot more. So Veronica is of course going to be great here. Repose, especially with its zero-cost Epiphany, plus Sir Kowalski, being her only 2 cards if you remove all of her basics, the other 3 are upgrades. So she ends up with a really thin deck, and you're going to be drawing a ton of cards for Sereniel. She's always been the premier draw support. Besides that, there's also Cassius. Cassius, one big thing with him is that his 000 quest, Sereniel is playing a lot of zero-cost cards with all the homing lasers that you'll be playing, and cycling on Ravage. He's gonna be able to help her a lot, though he is getting adjusted at some point in the future, so we'll see how long that holds up. Still, the Dice Trick upgrade for even more quest cards, and you can use Devil Dice to help you shuffle, or you cycle through your deck more, plus Shuffle, Joker. Pretty solid draw support, with a bunch of damage coming in from his morale on quest completion, thanks to Sereniel cycling through all of her homing lasers. We also have Nia. Nia, mainly if you're abusing the forbidden card Eternal Hunger, you can use Adagio on this one here, draw 2, discard 2. This is worded very weirdly, but basically, if you draw Eternal Hunger and then you discard it, it'll move it to the top of the draw pile, so you can just cycle a ton of AP and draw with Eternal Hunger. She's just got a bunch of draw and AP gain via that setup that can help with your Sereniel playing all your cards and getting all of them. We also have, I guess, Mika, which is really just for Chaos. She doesn't really do much besides just heal. It's for getting through Chaos runs, though they've mentioned before that they're going to be adjusting some of the controllers to have more healing, so we might be able to use other characters with Sereniel in Chaos besides Mika, which could be really nice. So you could do like Nia, Ray, Sereniel potentially in Chaos and be okay, or Veronica, Ray, Sereniel, something like that. Ray just being a generic damage buffer. And then there's also Orlia, who does also have Instinct, but I think it would be a wait for buff thing as it stands. There's not really any reason to use Orlia. Selena is a very specific setup, because the entire thing hinges around this Epiphany on Tactical Maneuver, where if the target is already ravaged, then you can recharge their tenacity. Now, Sereniel is going to benefit from this a lot, of course, because when you ravage, you get all of your homing lasers back, you can recharge their tenacity, and then ravage them again, get all of your homing lasers back, and so on. So, this is specifically a thing, I think, only really for Great Rift. I'm not even sure if this is like useful for general bossing, but this is going to be nice for Great Rift or anything where you're trying to score super high or just trying to kill them really fast. So that's it for the Sereniel rundown. I think this character is really strong. Like, if you have the resources for her, you should probably try and pick her up, especially because she's limited. There is one thing where, so she's limited and she's probably rerunning soon. Not soon, but like she probably is going to be a character that does rerun at some point. I've been seeing some people concerned about like the general like progression of the game with them finally releasing a really strong character. I personally don't think it'll matter that much because of the way that the content in this game is structured right now. We'll see what happens with the Spiral Tower of Screams. There's not really much hard content. The only thing that qualifies as hard content is trying to go for top 1% in Great Rift. But the next Great Rift is probably going to be based around 9, not Sereniel. So, I don't think it's the end of the world if you don't manage to get Sereniel. Mei Lin is still an amazing character. But definitely, if you like the character and you have the resources for it, Sereniel is a very nice character to pick up.